And when you are a liar and you are inconsistent, you are harmful. When you are harmful, I have to protect myself against you. So what I'm going to do is I'm either going to poke you to where you freak out, and then BPD can say, see, they're not dependable. They're freaking out, right? Can't do that. You have to stay consistent in your behavior and your response. Very difficult. I get it, but very possible as well. Navigating relationships can be challenging, but how do you handle it when the person you care about has borderline personality disorder? Well, I'm going to give you 10 tips for navigating relationships with someone with BPD. Now, when we navigate relationships with someone who has borderline personality disorder, BPD, this can be very challenging, but also rewarding. By understanding their unique emotional needs and implementing supportive strategies like what we're going to talk about here, you can foster a healthy, more stable connection. So these are the 10 essential tips to help guide you on this journey. So let's get into it. Here we go. Number 1, educate yourself. Learn about BPD, its symptoms, and how it affects behavior in relationships. Now, I'm coming to you on YouTube, of course, so be careful, though, when you look for or search for borderline personality disorder on YouTube or Google or anywhere else, because you're going to find a lot of clickbait, a lot of stuff. It's based on old data. First, when you look stuff up and you educate yourself about it, first and foremost, I want you to ask yourself, does this person work with people with BPD, and do they have that experience? There's a lot of, regretfully, mental health providers who've worked with very, very few or none that hold antiquated views of those with BPD, believing that they're constantly destructive, constantly cutting themselves, constantly fighting with other people, and that it is all intentional and that they are driven to destroy themselves and others. I'm going to tell you, working in this field over 20 years, these people do not do that. They do not have a malicious intent. It can feel that way because what happens is that individuals with BPD often have very unstable sense of self-image. They often have abandonment issues, rejection sensitivity, emptiness, so they don't really understand themselves or how they can get their own needs met. But if you understand that this is where they're coming from, and it's often not intentional, they're not trying to make their life terrible. In my 20 plus years of doing this, I've never had anybody come into my office and say, tell you, doc, what I'd like to do is blow up my life even more. Can you give me some strategies where I could just blow it up even more? I've never had anybody do that. I really haven't. I don't expect to ever have somebody who's going to ask for that. So understand that you've got to educate yourself, but make sure that it's from a source that you can trust. Also, make sure that the person actually works with individuals with BPD. If they don't, you got to question it. Hold on a second. Are you going to get a recipe from somebody who doesn't cook? It's like, wait, what? Right. Probably not, because how are they going to make the recipe? How are they going to be able to tell you something? But they could probably tell you about other recipes or different stuff, but they're not going to be able to tell you the exact measurements or what it needs for you to get that outcome. Same thing for BPD. So educate yourself, very important. Number 2, you got to practice patience and empathy. It is not easy. Often individuals with BPD, they have a lot of mood swings and really intensive emotional reactions. And I know when that happens, they know how to push buttons, these folks, because they do have a maladaptive ability to see buttons in others. They can see other people's kind of triggers and weak points. Now, they don't do it to be manipulative. And you may say, yes, they do. No, they don't. They do it for adaptive reasons. They do it in order for themselves to keep themselves safe. So they might know where your buttons are. So you need to know your buttons. You need to know your triggers and recognize when they get pushed, because that's when you are going to have to take that deep breath, and that can be a deep, deep breath because your buttons just got pushed. And it's hard to not be frustrated. It's hard not to feel attacked. Absolutely. And you may need to take a break. And some individuals that are along the borderline personality disorder spectrum, when you need that break, they're going to see that as you abandoning them, rejecting them. That's where we have to have those clear boundaries. Now that's next. We're going to talk about clear boundaries next, but I want you to try to exercise patience and empathy as best that you can. And it's okay, I think, to explain to that person, look, I hear what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. You're really coming at me in a very intense way. We got to dial it down a little bit. I'm not trying to control you. It's just hard for me to hear you when there's so much going on. Help me understand what's going on. I've said that countless times in my career to my clients. Absolutely. Because a lot of times they'll get so emotional. They were holding it in all week and they're like, oh, and they just explode in my office. And I don't mind if you explode in my office. That's totally cool because I can handle it. But I'm going to let you get it out. Then, first of all, I know where my buttons are. So my clients aren't going to push it, right? So I'm aware of it. But if they do happen to get to that button and push it, I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to say, okay, hold on. You're screaming too much. You're too, worked up. It's hard for me to follow you. Hold on, slow down a minute because I want to hear what you have to say. That can be really hard, and I recognize that, but that's part of the approach of patience and empathy. Really, really important. You got to have clear boundaries. That's number 3. You got to establish and maintain clear and consistent boundaries to ensure that there's mutual respect and understanding. However, this can be really difficult. Now, boundaries don't have to be, right? No, it has to be this way or no way. Boundaries, first we got to explain them. We got to explain them not when the person is in the heat of the moment, right? Not when they're having what's called a florid BPD reaction. That means that their core content has been activated and they're going, man. They're screaming, yelling, making threats, all that other stuff. That's not the time to say, I'm going to start to set some clear boundaries. That's not the time to do it. You do it when everything's calm, when everything's cool, and you say, you know what? Let's talk about boundaries in our relationship. Now, I know boundaries, we think boundaries suck, but they don't suck, and they're really important, right? So we want to define them, want to strike when the iron is cold, not when it's red hot. Don't do that. Now, when you set those boundaries, you have to set them and maintain them. That's the hardest thing, because interestingly, when you set boundaries, and then if you cave on them, what you're essentially saying is you can't trust me. So, yeah, I want to help you, but not really because I want it to be convenient because when I set these boundaries, I'm kind of wishy-washy because at the moment it sounds good. So then, but you can trust me. Huh? No, I can't. That's why with my clients, what I do, well, actually everybody in my life, what I do is if I say it, I mean it. If I mean it, I'm going to do it. So I say what I do and do what I say. You have to do that. Because otherwise, these individuals with BPD, then they realize they can't trust you. Like, I don't know. Are you going to hurt me? Are you lying to me? Are you manipulating me? And you may not do anything. But having those boundaries is critical. Do not enable unhealthy behaviors. Do not enable addictions. I can't tell you how many times I work with a client and we're working on an addiction they may have. And then we feel like we've got a good strategy. We've got a good strategy for the next couple days. And they go home and then their significant other, family member, whoever it is, they cave, right? And I may have had a discussion with them. Okay, we're going to do this and this is going to be in place. Okay. Well, but I thought, I didn't really want to do that. So I didn't. Okay. So that tells me, okay, this isn't a person that I can count on to really strengthen that. So then what I got to do is I got to work with my client and say, okay, we're going to have to set boundaries. This is going to be straight with you and me. So we're going to have to really put that in place. Now, my boundary is not, if you don't do A, then I'm going to kick you out of treatment. It would never be that, because what would that do? That would basically be justifying a fear of abandonment, rejection, and that's going to feed emptiness, which is going to drive them to destroy the relationship and act out. Why would I do that? I'm not going to do that, because what I say is what I mean. And if my job is to help you get over it, you need to have someone in your life that you can count on, that the words that they say, they mean it. And all my clients know, if I say it, I mean it. Absolutely. And they're not to punish them, right? Boundaries aren't a punishment tool. Boundaries are a clarification tool. And it's important to know that. Now, you want to encourage, number 4, you want to encourage professional help. And this is, you want to help them to seek therapy and treatment. Now, BPD is the most successfully treated personality disorder. Absolutely it is. The person has to seek treatment. You can't do it for them. You can't try to learn the strategies and then implement the strategies to make their life easier. They have to want to come to me. If they don't want to come to me and they don't want to be there, I can't make them look inside themselves, challenge a lot of those demons they have, explore the core content of what's going on, where those fears are, relate them to their past, and all those other factors that we got to work on. Because a lot of times they're engaging in a lot of self-destructive behaviors, and they need to unlearn those self-destructive behaviors and relearn or learn adaptive behaviors. Most people know. Most people that I work with that have addictions, for example, they know the addictions are bad. They know that the addictions negatively impact their life, but they're drawn to it. Why? Well, dopamine, right? Kicks off a little dopamine for them. Also, there's this thing called family in the head. This is this little chorus in their brain that encourages them to hurt themselves, to work against themselves. And they get short-term rewards from the maladaptive strategies. You get rewards from getting high, getting drunk, getting distracted, whatever it is. And I get that. I get that. The problem is you got to realize that short-term reward leads to long-term severe consequence. And over time, sometimes those long-term consequences solidify. And when they solidify, what that means is that natural consequences in life could be age, could be various experience, but you're going to get locked out of various experiences. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know how you're living your life, but that's the reality. Over time, those long-term consequences solidify. For example, you continue to use drugs, you're eventually going to have health concerns. I mean, I've seen it time and time and time again. You may not. You may be part of that very, very small percentage that doesn't. I wouldn't want to live my life on the small percentage somehow don't have negative consequences. However, over time, you are going to hit a concrete long-term consequence. So we got to get into treatment. You got to encourage their professional help that they are going to be receptive to it, but they have to do it. You can't force them to do it. You can't say, you have to do this or that. The ultimatums don't work. I'm telling you, they have to be willing to do it. Can you do it with empathy, patience, talking about your fear, right? And that takes us to our next one, is that we've got to maintain open and honest communication and communicating with them about what your worries are. Don't say, oh, you're so messed up, you're so broken, you're so crazy. You have to uncrazy yourself. Whoa, 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 whoa. Don't do that. That's not going to work. Not going to work. And you're not going to shame them into wanting to go and get help. You're not, because all you're doing is you're turning up the volume of that family in the head. You're intensifying BPD, because BPD tells them you can't trust anybody in your life. And anybody you think you can trust, you can't, because eventually they're going to tell you that you're worthless, broken, and terrible. And if they haven't told you yet, it just means they think it and haven't told you. And if you hear that, you really hear what I just said, that means no matter who it is in your life, they're going to betray you and hurt you and leave you desolate and desperate. Man, that's scary. It's really scary. So having that open and honest communication, do as you say and say as you do, is critical. And use I statements when you talk to them. Talk about how you feel, what it's like for you. I'm really worried that some of these behaviors may really cause some long-term problems for you. I don't want you to experience that. I want to try to help you as best I can. I want you to let me help you if you're willing to do that, if you'll let me. So that may be something that they could hear. You could even send them this video, say, hey, check this out. Let me know what you think. They maybe need to hear it from me, right? And that's okay. Use those I statements. You have to turn down that tendency to be threatening, because I know as many partners and parents and family members and all that stuff that I've talked to, no one has ever said, well, I'm going to threaten them into straightening up. Now they've said, they don't do this, I'm going to kick them out. They inadvertently say that because they don't know what else to do, and they think tough love is the way to go. Let me tell you, you're never going to love them tough enough more than BPD is making their life tough. You're not. You're not going to do it. So we've got to have honest and open communication. Number 6, we got to manage your expectations. Recognize that change is going to take time. Progress is going to be slow. Slow. You want to celebrate small victories. If they have a day where they don't break down, if they have a day that seems all calm, you can be like, hey, today was a really good day. Cool. It was great hanging out with you today. I really enjoyed hanging out with you today. It was great. Be careful. Use those I statements, because if you phrase it in a way, oh, you didn't even freak out today. Don't do that, because BPD is going to twist it around, and BPD is going to tell them, family in the head is going to say, well, they're saying that you're really a loser because you have one day out of 365 days that you didn't freak out. And that's not what you mean. So what we want to do is you want to celebrate small victories, right? Use your I statements. Also, recognize if they're in treatment, it's going to take time. The average amount of time that I work with someone is typically 4 years. And in that time, it's amazing how they start to succeed and manage their behaviors and manage how they interact with others. Absolutely. It's really, really cool. But it takes time, and it's hard. It's really, really hard. Let me give you an example. Imagine, right, that you have to change something about yourself. That you really, not that you like to do it, but you do it often. It's one of your default perceptions and behaviors. So imagine that you have to change that about you. But in changing it, you have a maladaptive and unrealistic fear that it is going to change everything about you and who you are. Wouldn't that scare you? Yeah, it would. It would scare me. So it makes total sense. So you have to manage your expectations. Recognize that it is going to take time for them to do it. And they have to stay committed. You can encourage that. You can say, hey, it's great. Hey, did you see Dr. Fox this week? Oh, that's really cool. Do you want to talk about what you guys talked about? Is there anything I can do to help you? And if you say it, you gotta do it. If they say, oh yeah, they were talking about me, not drinking anymore. Okay, that means, you know what? Let me just make sure I have no alcohol in the house. Get it out of the house. Help them out. Support them in their trajectory, in their journey to manage their personality disorder. Help them do that. But recognize it takes time. It is very much not a light switch on and off. It is very much a dimmer switch. Turning it up and turning it down. It takes time, and everybody's transition and growth takes time. So we got to be patient with that one. Next one is you got to take care of yourself. As their partner or a family member, it is tough. Make sure you have your own support system and that you engage in self-care practices. One of the things that I have found is that people are so hypocritical about self-care. Like often say, oh man, you should be taking care of yourself. But the people who say it never do it. Well, you got to do it. You got to take care of yourself. You got to live a healthy lifestyle as best you can, exercise as much as you can, eat right as much as you can. Hey, I love M&M's, ice cream, and donuts, but I don't eat it every day. Well, if I do have ice cream, I do have ice cream in the evening, but I have a little bit. It's just a little taste, just a tiny bit. Would I love to go to town? Absolutely, right? There's this Bluebell. It's a caramel brownie thing. I don't know. I could eat that whole gallon. Am I gonna? No, because I got to take care of myself. So I get a couple scoops and I have that at night. That's it. Even if I open up the Ben & Jerry's New York Super Fudge Chunk, one of the best ice creams of all time, I just have a little bit. I maybe eat a third and then I put it away. But that's part of self-care. When we're talking about helping someone we love and care about deal with, manage, and get over BPD, we have to make sure that we have outlets. I've worked with a lot of individuals that are partners that we work on ways that they can manage themselves, ways that they can help themselves, because the relationship is very tumultuous and there's so much stuff going on and it is so difficult for them, not because they don't love the person, not because they don't feel like that person with BPD is worth it. They absolutely do. But if you don't put your mask on first, right? Like on an airplane, you put your mask on first. That means you suffocate. You're not putting you're not helping anybody. You're not helping the person next to you. You're not helping your kids. You're not helping anybody else. You got to put your mask on first so that you have the energy and ability to help that person. You got to do that. You got to do that. Next, talked about this one earlier, but we're going to zone into it. Avoid triggering situations. Now, you got to be mindful that there are certain topics that are going to really set you off. Now, there's a difference between triggers and emotional buttons. Now, I have a video on it. I'll put the link right here for you. You can check it out. Triggers are, the way I conceptualize it, triggers are more like pet peeves, right? They're like, somebody, squeezes the toothpaste in the middle and then it dries out all the toothpaste at the far end and you're kind of like, why are you doing that? That's a pet peeve. An emotional button is something maybe somebody said, something somebody did, an experience you had, and it brings back all these memories and all these emotions. Now, because individuals with BPD, or they do it adaptively, or they used to, that they read people really well. And the reason they do that is often because they had to do that to try to protect themselves. Maybe it was trauma. Maybe it's abandonment. I have to try to read that person to know if they're safe or not. I have to try to read that person to know are they going to take advantage of me? Are they going to hurt me? What is it? I have to read them quickly. Now, people who don't understand BPD, they say, oh, they do that to be manipulative. No, they don't. They do that to protect themselves. And that's why they do it. So we have to understand those triggering situations. When you feel that emotional button, it's harder to control your reactions because they've hit something emotional for you that's triggered a whole lot of past emotions, memories, issues, stuff like that. You're flooded with all that. So now this person who is very emotionally volatile has activated an emotional button or triggered you in some way, whether it's a little pet peeve, whatever it may be, or the emotional button, and you are getting hot. You're like, man, I'm getting frustrated and pissed off, you know what I mean, right? Get real frustrated and angry, and then you clash, right? Now, don't want to do that. You have to be aware that you are going to encounter triggering situations. This is why strike when the iron's cold. When you guys, you and the partner, family member, whoever, have those triggering situations, what is your response plan? How are you going to respond to it? If you go into a building, you'll see the fire alarm plan, right? In case of fire, do such and such. Do the same thing in your relationship. In case of fire, we're going to do such and such. Timeout. Maybe it's a timeout. Maybe it's that you write a letter to each other, right? But it has to be using positive words and encouragement, not you're this, you're that, you're this, and when you do this, you are making me feel. Nobody makes you feel anyway. It's your choice to feel that way. I know it can sometimes feel like someone is pushing those buttons and those emotional buttons are going and the triggers and all that other stuff. You're making me feel. Nope. You have embraced that emotion. It is tough. Trust me. I get it. But you got to do that. In case of fire, do such and such. Do it in your relationship. Number 9, stay consistent. Consistency in behavior and responses provide a sense of stability and predictability. This helps someone feel safe. Just like with little babies, right? When you have the baby, that baby has to learn that when I'm, gone in my diaper or I need some help, I start what? Crying. When I'm crying, is that parent responsive? Are you stable and predictable? If you are, that builds a sense of trust in the baby. So the baby realizes they can trust you. Same thing with someone with BPD. Can they trust you? Are you consistent? Sometimes I'm here to help you. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I am firm with my boundaries. Sometimes I'm not. I mean, all of that, flexibility, right? You think you're doing yourself a favor. Oh, I'm just going to, I'll just forgive it this one time. No, don't do that. You have to be consistent. And that is so important. Do what you say what you do. You've got to do that and stay wedded to that idea. If you don't, you're encouraging BPD and family in the head because that means you're a liar and you're inconsistent. That is exactly what that person is hearing in their head. And when you are a liar and you are inconsistent, you are harmful. When you are harmful, I have to protect myself against you. So what I'm going to do is I'm either going to poke you to where you freak out and then BPD can say, see, they're not dependable. They're freaking out, right? Can't do that. You have to stay consistent in your behavior and your response. Very difficult. I get it, but very possible as well. Last, encourage healthy coping mechanisms. And you want to promote adaptive strategies that helps the individual manage stress and emotions. This could be exercising with them, doing hobbies with them, mindful practices. Yoga is amazing. It's really great. But encourage that. If you go do those things, go and do it. Don't just tell them if you don't exercise and be like, oh, you should go exercise. Come on. Go together. Do it together. Do things that you like. Go for a walk dogs, walk wherever you want, or go for a walk. Engage in some beneficial activity. Go to a driving range, whatever you want to do. But encourage healthy coping mechanisms. Encourage adaptive strategies and behaviors, so that you are that positive influence for this individual. It is absolutely possible for you to be a positive influence and help someone manage their BPD. What I just said is help them manage their BPD, not manage it for them. I hope this was helpful. I'm going to leave a video right here on how to manage sort of emotional or behavioral explosions that you might find helpful. So check it out. And I will see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.